The wounded alien's blood sprayed the wreckage of Gabriel's escape pod as the human dragged his enemy inside, struggling to keep the gushing wounds closed long enough to save its life. Gabriel had crash-landed alone on this planet after a fierce space battle forced him to retreat. His human ship was outmatched by the powerful Betazoid warship and took heavy damage. Gabriel barely escaped, jettisoning in a pod before his vessel exploded. When Gabriel emerged from the wreckage, he discovered another crashed ship, a Betazoid fighter. He cautiously approached and found the pilot, Uko, barely clinging to life. Gabriel knew if he left Uko to die alone, he'd be stranded on this desolate world forever, with no hope of rescue. The Betazoids would never bother searching for a single missing fighter, but a human captive. That would bring their entire fleet. Gabriel had to keep Uko alive. His own survival depended on it, even if every patriotic instinct screamed to let his enemy perish. So he dragged Uko's broken body back to his escape pod turned makeshift shelter. Gabriel worked frantically to stabilize Uko with his first aid kit. He didn't know if Betazoid biology was compatible with human treatments, but he had to try. Too much was at stake. Uko's ship had a distress beacon strong enough to punch through the interference in this system and reach the battling fleets above. But it was damaged in the crash. Only Uko would know how to repair it. And if they couldn't signal for rescue, Gabriel and Uko would both be stranded forever on this hostile alien world, surrounded by vicious predators and cut off from all aid. Everything depended on Gabriel saving the life of his most hated enemy. He had to swallow his disgust and animosity. He needed to nurse this alien back to health, build a partnership, and work with Uko to survive. Patriotic fury and xenophobic bile churned in Gabriel's gut as alien blood coated his hands, but he had no choice. Saving this vile creature was the only way to save himself. Otherwise, they'd both die abandoned and alone on this nightmarish planet. The days dragged on, each one a brutal struggle just to see the next. Gabriel and Uko were stranded on a hellish world intent on killing them a million different ways. The very air was caustic, forcing them to rig makeshift rebreathers from ship debris. The temperature swung wildly between searing heat and bitter cold, with little warning. And then there were the monsters, vicious beasts that saw the survivors as fresh meat. Their skills were the only reason they still breathed. Gabriel's years exploring deep space made him a master of improvisation. He assembled shelters from torn hull plating, converted shattered drive cores into power generators, and even managed to rig a hydroponic garden to supplement their rations. Uko's Betazoid physiology was their edge against the planet's creatures. His superior strength and reflexes let him wrestle beasts Gabriel couldn't dream of fighting. He identified the few plants safe for them to eat and steered them clear of the most deadly predators. But while their talents kept them alive, their clashing personalities threatened to tear them apart. Every interaction was tainted by mutual loathing. "These power cells are almost drained," Gabriel said, checking their salvaged batteries. "We need to find more or we'll freeze when night comes." Uko sneered, his scaled lips twisting. "And whose fault is that? You waste energy on these pointless projects. If you listen to me—" "I'd already be dead," Gabriel snapped. "My pointless tinkering is the only reason we have shelter and clean water. But please, feel free to go off on your own. I'm sure you'll do just fine." They glared at each other, centuries of hatred and warfare hanging between them. Then Uko turned and stalked towards the hatch. "To find more cells since you're clearly incapable." They'd barely made it 100 meters from their shelter when a howl split the air. Gabriel spun, raising his rifle. 6 massive creatures emerged from the shadows, hides glistening in the half-light. They had vaguely canine bodies, but no wolf on Earth ever had fangs like that. But he'd only survive a few days on his own. Like it or not, he needed Uko. Snarling a curse, Gabriel opened fire, energy bolts stitching a line across the pack. One beast screeched and crumpled. Uko lunged past him, warblades flashing as he hacked at the leader. The monsters fell on them in a rush of claws and teeth. Gabriel and Uko fought back to back, plasma fire and steel slicing through the pack. Gabriel staggered as talons raked his side, shredding his pressure suit. He killed the beast, but his wound bled heavily. The pack broke, fleeing into the wastes. Ukko turned to Gabriel, eyes widening as he saw the human collapsed against a rock, hand pressed to his torn flank. "Go?" Gabriel gasped, vision blurring. "I'll slow you down." Ukko said nothing. He grabbed Gabriel and hauled him over his shoulders. The human howled in agony as the movement tore his wound further open. Then darkness took him. Gabriel woke in their shelter, the familiar ache of deep tissue regeneration throbbing in his side. Ukko crouched over him, long fingers working a betazoid tissue knitter. "You saved me," Gabriel murmured. "Why?" Ukko shrugged. "You fought for me. Loyalty should be repaid." "I guess we're even now." "No, I still owe you my life." Ukko finished his work and stood. "Rest, I'll stand watch." As the betazoid turned towards the hatch, Gabriel felt a flicker of something other than hate. Not quite camaraderie, but perhaps the first stirrings of understanding. They would never be friends, but if they wanted to survive this nightmare, they had to be more than enemies. Otherwise, the only thing they'd accomplish was blood. But as Gabriel healed and the unlikely companions found a rhythm to their fraught coexistence, curiosity slowly replaced hostility. During a survey of the crash site's perimeter, Ukko discovered an entrance to what appeared to be ruins, half buried in the planet's rubble-strewn wastes. Strange glyphs marked the weathered stone, and the archway seemed to beckon them inside. "We should investigate," Ukko declared, his eyes alight with intrigue. "There may be technology we can use." Gabriel hesitated, memories of their desperate fight still fresh, but the lure of escape was too strong. "Fine, but watch your step. God knows what's waiting in there." They entered warily, plasma rifles at the ready, but what they found stole their breath. Towering architecture soared above them, the walls shimmering with pulsing lines of energy. Artifacts of inscrutable purpose littered the halls, hinting at a civilization far beyond human or betazoid ken. "Incredible," Gabriel whispered, running his fingers over a glowing console. "Whoever built this, like they were light years ahead of us." Ukko nodded, for once too awed to snipe. They delved deeper, marveling at the wonders around every turn, but as they crossed an ornate threshold, a sharp click echoed through the chamber. The door slammed shut behind them, and the room began to shake. "It's a trap," Ukko snarled, whirling to face Gabriel. "What did you touch?" "Me, I didn't do anything." The floor cracked open beneath them, and they plunged into darkness. They crashed into an underground chamber, the impact driving the air from their lungs. Stone ground against stone as hidden mechanisms engaged, and a glyph-covered door rolled into place, sealing them in. "Wonderful," Gabriel spat, picking himself up. "Just wonderful." Ukko ignored him, scanning the room with narrowed eyes. "There," he said, pointing to a small opening high on the wall. "That may be our way out." Gabriel squinted at the portal a good 3 meters up. "And how exactly are we supposed to get up there?" "Together," Ukko crouched, interlacing his fingers. "I will boost you up, then you pull me after." Gabriel stared at him, letting the betazoid throw him, trusting him to catch him. It galled his human pride. But there was no choice. He took a deep breath and stepped into Ukko's hands. The alien warrior heaved, launching Gabriel at the opening. For a sickening second he thought he'd fall short, but his hands caught the edge, and he dragged himself through. Heart hammering, he turned and reached back. "Ukko, grab on." The betazoid leaped, catching Gabriel's wrist. For a moment they hung there, suspended by fragile, grudging trust. Then, with a grunt of effort, Gabriel hauled his one-time enemy to safety. They emerged into a vaulted chamber, dominated by a glowing column in the center. Cautiously they approached, and the column pulsed brighter. A melodic voice resonated from it, speaking in an alien tongue that nevertheless seemed to translate itself in their minds. "Welcome, visitors. I am Zephyr, steward of the Edenite legacy." Gabriel and Ukko shared a wary glance. "Edenites?" Gabriel asked. Who were they? A peaceful species, dedicated to knowledge and harmony. They foresaw the great conflicts to come and left this repository, that their wisdom might guide those who found it. Uko leaned closer, fascinated despite himself. And what happened to them? Alas, they could not save themselves from the cataclysm that consumed this world. But their hope endures, for those with the courage to claim it. Gabriel and Uko looked at each other, centuries of enmity warring with the tantalizing promise before them. In the end, the chance to end the war, to bring a new age to the galaxy, could not be denied. "Tell us more," Gabriel said, and Zephyr did. They lost track of time as they explored the archive, absorbing the philosophy and technology of a long-dead race. But the more they learned, the more one inescapable truth crystallized. The Edenites had known the humans and Betazoids would clash, and had left the keys to peace. "So we have to bring this back," Gabriel insisted, as they pored over a schematic. "This could end the war forever." Uko traced a finger over the diagram and nodded slowly. "Agreed, but our peoples, will they listen? Will they believe?" "They'll have to. We'll make them understand. A boom shook the complex, followed by the unmistakable sound of Betazoid fighter craft. Gabriel and Uko sprinted for the entrance, emerging to see a squad of armed Betazoids fanning out around Uko's beacon. Gabriel and Uko froze, the promise of peace suddenly teetering on a knife's edge. The wrong move now, one rash action, and the only thing they'd accomplish. The lead Betazoid soldier leveled his rifle at Gabriel. "Uko, step away from the human, now!" Uko moved between them, hands raised. "Commander Zark, wait, you don't understand." "I understand betrayal when I see it," Zark snarled. He gestured to his squad. "Take them both into custody. The Emperor will decide their fate." The soldiers advanced, weapons trained on Gabriel and Uko. Gabriel tensed, reaching for his sidearm, but Uko shook his head. Fighting here would only get them killed. "We have to go back," Uko said, low and urgent. "The Edenite ruins, it's our only chance." Gabriel nodded. As the Betazoids closed in, the two turned and sprinted for the ancient complex, plasma fire sizzling past them. They plunged into the maze of corridors, Zark's enraged shouts echoing behind them. Uko led the way, his memory of the ruins' layout guiding them deeper into the labyrinth. A bolt struck the wall near Gabriel's head, molten rock spraying his face. He returned fire blindly, diving around a corner. "We can't keep this up forever!" "We won't have to." Uko pointed ahead to a shimmering doorway. "Zephyr, we need your help." The AI's melodic voice filled the air. "I am here, my friends. I will aid your escape." As they ran through the door, a shimmering force field sprang up behind them, and blast shields began slamming down throughout the complex, cutting off Zark's pursuit. Gabriel and Uko navigated the shifting labyrinth, following Zephyr's guidance, until they emerged into a cavernous hangar. At its center stood an elegant, streamlined vessel, gleaming with unfamiliar alloys. "An Edenite starship," Gabriel breathed, "fully operational." Uko was already sprinting for the ramp. "It's our ticket out of here, let's go." They dashed aboard, sealing the hatch behind them. The interior was all sleek curves and glowing interfaces, the technology far beyond anything they'd seen. "We're about to find out." Uko slid into the pilot's seat, scanning the console. His fingers danced over the controls, and the ship thrummed to life around them. Realization dawned in Gabriel's eyes. "We can use this to bring the Edenites' message back to our people, to stop the war." Uko nodded grimly. "If they'll listen." The hangar doors ground open, and the ship rose from its ancient berth. But as they angled towards the sky, a barrage of plasma fire rocked the hull. Zark had broken through. The Betazoid commander's face filled the viewscreen, twisted with rage. "Traitors! Land now or be destroyed!" Uko's hands flew over the controls, raising shields and powering weapons. "Gabriel, man the guns, keep them off us!" Gabriel leaped to the tactical console, bringing the ship's armaments online. As Uko wove through the ruins, Gabriel rained fire on their pursuers, alien energy beams lancing out to slash Betazoid ships from the sky. Zark's flagship loomed before them, weapons charging. "Uko, you treasonous filth, surrender the human and your death will be quick." Uko's eyes narrowed. "I'll never betray Gabriel. He's taught me more about honor and courage than the Empire ever did." Zark roared in fury and opened fire, the flagship's cannons hammering their shields. Alarms blared as the barrage took its toll. "Shields failing," Gabriel shouted, fighting to keep the weapons online. "We can't take much more of this." The Edenite craft shot skyward, Zark's fleet hot on its heels. The sky blazed as the duel raged through the atmosphere, the planet falling away beneath them. With a final burst of speed, they broke orbit, the flagship's shots going wide as they hurtled into the void. Zark's apoplectic face filled the comm, spittle flying as he screamed his fury. "Run while you can, traitors. There's nowhere in the galaxy you can hide from the Emperor's wrath." Uko silenced the comm with a stab of his finger. In the sudden quiet, he and Gabriel looked at each other, the magnitude of what they'd just done sinking in. Uko gave a wry smile. "Till the end, whatever that may be." He laid in a course for the nearest neutral space station, the ship leaping into faster than light. As the stars blurred around them, Gabriel and Uko both knew their true battle was just beginning. Somehow, they had to bring the Edenites' message of peace to their warring species, and that meant facing the prejudice and hostility of their own kind. It would be the fight of their lives. But as Gabriel looked at Uko, seeing not an enemy but a friend and ally, he felt a flicker of hope. Together, maybe, just maybe, they could change the course of history and end the war once and for all. The Edenite ship shuddered as Gabriel guided it into the docking bay of Starbase Artemis, a sprawling space station straddling the border between human and Betazoid space. The alien metal of the ship's hull drew wary looks from the hangar crew, a motley assortment of humans, Betazoids, and a dozen other species. Gabriel and Uko strode down the ramp, the weight of their mission heavy on their shoulders. The station's inhabitants eyed them with suspicion, distrust evident in every face. Whispers followed their footsteps as they made their way through the crowded promenade. Uko scanned the crowd, his warrior instincts alert for any threat. They fear what they don't understand. We must tread carefully. Navigating the labyrinth of corridors, they sought out potential allies, those who might be swayed by the promise of peace. In smoky back rooms and shadowed alcoves, they met with smugglers, diplomats, and spies, each with their own agendas and alliances. "The Edenites' technology could change everything," Gabriel insisted, his voice low and urgent. "But we need help to spread their message." Most turned them away, unwilling to risk their precarious positions, but a very few, agreed to lend their support, swayed by the sincerity in Gabriel and Uko's eyes. Hope flickering in their hearts, they secured a meeting with Zolara, a renowned mediator known for her impartiality. Her sleek office overlooked the stars, a tranquil oasis amidst the station's chaos. "Your story is incredible," Zolara said, her lilac eyes wide. "If what you say is true—" The door exploded inward, shards of metal flying. Gabriel shoved Zolara down as plasma bolts sizzled overhead. Betazoid assassins poured into the room, led by a familiar, hated face. "Zark," Uko snarled, drawing his blade. "I should have known you'd follow us." Gabriel glared at him, pieces falling into place. "You're not just here for revenge. You're working with someone on our side, aren't you? Someone who wants this war to continue." Zark laughed, the sound harsh and grating. "Very astute for a human. There are those on both sides who profit from this conflict, and you two, you threaten everything." Plasma fire erupted, blasting smoking holes in the walls. Gabriel returned fire, the acrid scent of ozone filling the air. Uko lunged at Zark, their blades clashing in a spray of sparks. In the chaos, Zolara cried out, a bolt searing her flesh. Gabriel dragged her to cover, desperation clawing at his heart. "Hang on, we'll get you out of here." But the mediator shook her head, blood bubbling from her lips. "No, too late for me. You must get the truth out, no matter the cost." With a final shuddering breath, she went limp in his arms. Gabriel roared his rage and grief, blasting an assassin off his feet. Ukko, locked in mortal combat with Zark, heard his cry and redoubled his assault, driving the traitor back with a flurry of blows. Laying Zolara down gently, Gabriel snatched up the data crystal containing the Edenite's message. He and Ukko fought their way out of the office, leaving a trail of broken bodies in their wake. They fled through the station's underbelly, dodging pursuers at every turn. In a dingy maintenance closet they caught their breath, the weight of their failure crushing their souls. "Zolara's dead because of us," Gabriel whispered, "because we trusted the wrong person." Ukko gripped his shoulder, his eyes hard as flint. "Her death will not be in vain. We will find another way." Gabriel met his gaze, a fire kindling in his heart. "The summit, it's our last chance." Disguised in stolen maintenance uniforms, they slipped into the summit's venue, a grand hall filled with dignitaries from both sides. The air crackled with tension, centuries of hatred and mistrust simmering beneath the surface. Gabriel and Ukko crept through the shadows, the data crystal clutched tight. They were steps away from the podium when all hell broke loose. Zark strode into the hall, a contingent of soldiers at his back. "Seize them!" he roared, pointing at Gabriel and Ukko. "They're here to kill your leaders." Panic erupted, diplomats scrambling for cover as soldiers surged forward. Gabriel and Ukko found themselves surrounded, a ring of guns trained on their hearts. "Traitors," Zark crowed. "You'll pay for your crimes." Gabriel locked eyes with Ukko, a wordless message passing between them. In a single, fluid motion they dove to the sides, plasma fire scorching the air where they'd stood. The battle was joined, a whirlwind of flashing blades and searing bolts. Gabriel and Ukko fought back to back, a human and a betazoid united against a common foe. But even as they struggled to stay alive, Gabriel knew they had to make the leaders understand. He had to get the truth out before it was too late. Ducking a wild swing, he leaped onto the podium, the data crystal held high. "Listen to me," he shouted, his voice raw with desperation. "We have proof that this war is a lie." Plasma bolts sizzled through the air as Gabriel and Ukko sprinted for cover, the summit erupting into bedlam around them. Diplomats screamed and dove for safety, while Zark's soldiers opened fire with ruthless precision. "We have to get out of here," Gabriel shouted over the chaos, ducking behind a pillar. Ukko nodded grimly, his blade flashing as he deflected a hail of shots. "But how? They have us surrounded!" Suddenly a figure darted through the fray, plasma rifle blazing. It was a human woman, her eyes hard with determination. She reached Gabriel and Ukko's position and crouched beside them. "Ilara Voss," she introduced herself brusquely. "I'm here to help." "Because I know what Zark is planning," Ilara replied, "and it's worse than you can imagine." She led them through a hidden maintenance corridor, evading Zark's patrols. In a secluded room she revealed the truth. Zark and his allies had constructed a doomsday weapon powered by corrupted Edenite technology, capable of annihilating planets. And its first target was the Betazoid homeworld. "He's insane," Ukko growled. "We have to stop him." Ilara nodded. "I have a plan, but we'll need help." She introduced them to a cell of rogue Betazoid engineers, defectors sickened by their government's warmongering. Together, they hatched a desperate gambit: infiltrate the weapons facility and destroy it from within. The facility was a fortress of steel and plasma, bristling with defenses. But Ilara's intel and the engineers' knowledge let them slip inside, past patrolling guards and automated sentries. Once within, they split into teams, planting explosives at critical junctures. Gabriel and Ukko took the lead, their skills honed by months of survival, making them a lethal duo. But as they laid the final charge, alarms blared throughout the facility. Zark had discovered them. He and Ukko took up positions as Zark's troops flooded in. plasma raining down on them. They fought like demons, rifle and blade carving a bloody toll. But for every soldier they felled, 2 more took their place. "Gabriel," Uko called, his voice strained. "We can't hold much longer." Gabriel gritted his teeth, desperation and defiance warring within him. They just needed a little more time. Suddenly a massive explosion rocked the facility, throwing them from their feet. The charges had detonated, tearing the weapon apart from within. But the destruction was catastrophic. The facility began to crumble around them, girders twisting and walls cracking. Gabriel staggered upright, searching desperately for Uko amidst the rubble. He tackled Gabriel, and they tumbled across the heaving deck, locked in mortal combat. Fists flew and bones crunched as they battered each other, a lifetime of enmity fueling every blow. Through the haze of pain, Gabriel glimpsed Uko and the others struggling to escape the collapsing chamber. Girders crashed down around them, narrowly missing as they dodged and wove. Gabriel wanted to call out, but Zark's hands were around his throat, squeezing with all his betazoid might. Black spots swam in Gabriel's vision as he choked and thrashed. With a last surge of strength, he drove his knee into Zark's groin. The betazoid howled and loosened his grip. Gabriel wrenched free and staggered back, gasping for breath. The deck buckled beneath them, supports snapping like twigs. Zark lunged, murder in his eyes, but the floor gave way, and he plummeted into the abyss with a final, futile scream. Gabriel had no time to savor the victory. The world was coming apart around him. He saw Uko and Ilara across the chamber, waving frantically for him to follow. Stumbling and weaving, he ran for his life, leaping chasms and ducking falling debris. His lungs burned and his muscles screamed, but he pushed on, the exit tantalizingly close. With a final desperate leap, he hurled himself through the opening, just as the facility collapsed in on itself with a deafening roar. Gabriel hit the ground hard, rolling to a stop in a cloud of dust and ash. For a long moment he lay there, battered and bloody, every breath an agony. Then a hand grasped his arm, and he looked up to see Uko standing over him. The betazoid was bruised and filthy, but alive. Alive and victorious. Gabriel clasped his hand, and Uko pulled him upright. They stood together, watching the ruins of the facility burn, the superweapon destroyed along with it. "We did it," Gabriel rasped, hardly daring to believe it, "and we actually did it." Uko nodded solemnly. "But the war is not over. There will be others like Zark on both sides." "Then we'll stop them too." Gabriel met his gaze, a fierce light in his eyes. "Together." Ilara and the surviving engineers joined them, battered but triumphant. They had struck a blow for peace, but the fight was far from over. There would be battles ahead, Gabriel knew. Battles against enemies on all sides, and against the hatred and prejudice that had driven the war for so long. They turned their backs on the smouldering ruin and strode out into the future, ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead. Gabriel and Zark clashed in the heart of the collapsing facility, trading blows with savage fury. Dust and debris rained down around them as they fought, the destruction mirroring the turmoil of their conflict. Gabriel poured all his pain and desperation into each punch, driven by the need to end the war that had consumed his life. Zark fought with the fanatic zeal of a true believer, his eyes alight with hatred. "You think you can stop what's coming?" he snarled, slamming his fist into Gabriel's jaw. "The war will never end. Not until your kind is wiped from the galaxy." Gabriel staggered back, tasting blood. He spat it out and lunged again, driving his knee into Zark's gut. "It doesn't have to be this way," he shouted over the roar of crumbling metal. "The Edenites showed us a path to peace." Zark laughed, the sound harsh and mocking. "Peace? There can be no peace between us." He swept Gabriel's legs, sending him crashing to the ground. Gabriel rolled away just as a massive beam thundered down where he'd been lying. He scrambled to his feet, heart pounding. All around them, the facility was tearing itself apart, the screech of rending metal filling the air. He had to end this now. With a roar of effort, Gabriel tackled Zark, driving him back against the fallen beam. They grappled fiercely, straining against each other with every ounce of strength, but Gabriel had the advantage now, using his weight to pin Zark down. "It's over, Zark," Gabriel growled. "Yield!" Zark thrashed beneath him, his face contorted with rage. "Never! I'll die before I surrender to you." His hand scrabbled at his belt, and Gabriel's eyes widened as he saw the glint of a detonator. Zark was trying to blow them both to hell. "Gabriel!" Uko's shout rang out over the chaos. The Betazoid warrior sprinted towards them, dodging falling debris with preternatural grace. Gabriel wrenched at Zark's arm, fighting to keep the detonator out of reach. Zark snarled and bucked, but Gabriel held firm. Uko reached them in a blur of motion, his hands joining Gabriel's as they grappled with Zark. Zark's eyes gleamed with mad fervor. "Then we'll die together, traitor." His thumb strained for the detonator's trigger. Gabriel and Uko bore down with all their might, muscles screaming with effort. The detonator trembled between them, a hair's breadth from activation. With a final wrenching twist, Gabriel tore it from Zark's grasp and hurled it away. It clattered across the heaving floor and vanished into a gaping fissure. Zark howled in thwarted rage, but his cry was lost as a thunderous boom shook the chamber. The entire facility shuddered, the last of its supports giving way. Gabriel hesitated, staring down at Zark's hate-twisted face. He wanted to leave the bastard to die in the hell he'd created. But that wasn't what the Edenites taught. With a growl of frustration, Gabriel hauled Zark up and slung him over his shoulders. Together he and Uko ran, weaving through the cascading destruction. The floor buckled and cracked beneath their feet, and the walls crumbled around them. But they didn't slow, racing against the collapse. They burst from the facility just as it imploded with a deafening roar. The shockwave hurled them forward, and they tumbled to the ground in a tangle of limbs. Gabriel felt Zark's body slam into his, and heard the traitor's grunt of pain. Then silence, broken only by the settling of dust and the distant wail of alarms. Gabriel pushed himself up, every muscle aching. Beside him, Uko stirred, coughing on the choking air. And a few meters away, Zark lay still, his chest rising and falling shallowly. He was battered and broken, but alive. Gabriel met Uko's gaze, saw the same grim satisfaction in the Betazoid's eyes. They had done it. The facility was destroyed, the weapon nothing more than shattered rubble. Across the debris field, Gabriel saw human and Betazoid ships descending, summoned by the destruction. He saw soldiers and medics pouring out, faces taut with tension and confusion. And he saw the leaders of both sides, staring at the ruined facility with a dawning realization of what had almost come to pass. Gabriel straightened his shoulders, feeling the weight of the Edenites' message heavy upon him. It was time to end this war, once and for all. He and Uko strode forward to meet the gathering forces, leaving Zark to be collected by the medics. As they approached, Gabriel saw shock and anger on the faces of the human and Betazoid leaders. "What is the meaning of this?" Admiral Varys, the human commander, demanded. "What have you done?" "We've stopped a catastrophe," Gabriel said, his voice ringing with conviction, "and we bring a message that can end this conflict forever." He held up the data crystal, the Edenite's legacy glinting in the harsh light. Beside him, Uko stood tall, his presence a silent declaration of their shared purpose. The leaders exchanged wary glances, suspicion and curiosity warring on their faces. But as Gabriel began to speak, telling the tale of their journey and the truths they'd uncovered, he saw the first glimmers of understanding dawn in their eyes. It would not be an easy path. There would be resistance from those like Zark who clung to the old hatreds. There would be setbacks and challenges at every turn. But for the first time in generations there was hope. Hope for a future beyond endless war. And as Gabriel looked to Uko, seeing the fierce determination in his one-time enemy's gaze, he knew they would face that future together. Not as human and Betazoid, but as something more. As the guardians of a new era of peace. As the fragile peace process moved forward, Gabriel and Uko worked tirelessly as mediators. Their unique bond, a symbol of hope for the war-weary populations of both Earth and Beta Z. But even as trust grew between the former enemies, sinister forces plotted to shatter the hard-won progress. "Gabriel, take a look at this," Uko said, his voice tight with tension as he handed over a data pad. "Intercepted communications between suspected Betazoid extremists. They're planning something big." They brought their findings to Ilara, who had become a key ally in navigating the treacherous political landscape. Her eyes widened as she read the intel. Over the next several days, Gabriel, Uko and Ilara worked covertly with a small team of trusted security personnel from both sides. They dug deeper into the extremist network, tracing whispers and rumors, until a name emerged: Kravok. A charismatic Betazoid warlord with a reputation for ruthlessness, Kravok had long opposed any reconciliation with humans. His followers were small in number, but fanatical in their devotion. "He's the key," Uko growled. "If we can neutralize Kravok, the whole plot will unravel." But Kravok proved maddeningly elusive, always one step ahead of their efforts. As the summit approached, the pressure mounted. They knew the extremists had infiltrated the human delegation and planted bombs, but they couldn't risk a public confrontation that might derail the entire peace process. "We have to handle this ourselves," Gabriel decided. "Quietly and surgically, we find the bombs, disarm them, and take down Kravok and his followers without causing a panic." It was a daunting task, but they had no choice. The fate of billions hung in the balance. The night before the summit, Gabriel and Uko led their team on a covert sweep of the conference center. They moved in silence, scanners probing for the telltale signatures of explosives. One by one, they located the bombs hidden in maintenance shafts and under floor panels. Ilara and the Betazoid engineers worked swiftly to disarm each device, sweat beading on their brows as they diffused the intricate alien mechanisms. But even as they neutralized the last of the planted explosives, a chilling realization struck Gabriel. The bombs had been too easy to find, almost as if they'd been meant to be discovered. Suddenly alarms blared throughout the complex. On the security monitors, they saw Kravok striding into the main conference hall, a detonator clutched in his hand and a fanatical gleam in his eye. "He's going to blow the summit," Uko snarled. Gabriel felt a cold knot of dread in his gut. They dismantled Kravok's bombs, but the warlord must have kept one final ace up his sleeve. "We have to stop him," Gabriel said, checking his weapon, "no matter what it takes." They raced through the corridors, shedding all pretense of stealth. They burst into the conference hall to find Kravok holding court at the center of the room, the human and Betazoid delegates frozen in shocked silence. "Fools," Kravok roared. "You think you can make peace with these vermin? They must be exterminated for the glory of Beta Z." "Kravok," Gabriel shouted, leveling his gun at the warlord. "It's over. Drop the detonator and surrender." Kravok spun to face them, his lips curling in a sneer. "Gabriel and Uko, the traitors. You think you can stop me? With this, I will ignite a war that will consume the galaxy." He held up the detonator, his thumb hovering over the trigger. Gabriel and Uko advanced slowly, trying to get within reach. "Don't do this, Kravok," Uko urged. "More bloodshed won't help our people. The Edenites showed us a better way." "The Edenites were weak," Kravok spat. "As are you for following their pathetic ideals. No, I will show the true strength of the Betazoid race." His thumb moved to press the trigger. Gabriel and Uko lunged. Gabriel took a brutal blow to the temple, stars exploding across his vision. Beside him, Uko grunted in pain as Kravok's elbow slammed into his jaw. But they held on, refusing to let the warlord trigger the bomb. They rolled across the floor, smashing into furniture and sending delegates scattering. In the chaos, Gabriel heard a sickening click. Horror surged through him as he realized Kravok had managed to activate the detonator. A red light blinked to life on the device, counting down the seconds. "It's armed," Gabriel shouted. "Everyone out now." Panic erupted as the delegates stampeded for the exits. Uko wrenched the detonator from Kravok's grip and hurled it away. The warlord howled in rage and redoubled his efforts to break free. "Uko," Gabriel called desperately. "The bomb, you have to disarm it." Understanding flashed in Uko's eyes. With a mighty heave, he threw Kravok off and lunged for the detonator. Gabriel tackled the warlord, pinning him to the floor with all his strength. Kravok thrashed and bucked, spitting curses, but Gabriel held firm, praying that Uko could work his magic in time. Uko knelt over the bomb, his fingers flying over the unfamiliar controls. The countdown ticked inexorably downward. 5 seconds. 4. 3. Gabriel squeezed his eyes shut, bracing for the end. He heard Uko grunt with effort, and then... silence. No deafening roar, no searing heat. Gabriel dared to open his eyes. Uko sagged back, the detonator dark and lifeless in his hands. He met Gabriel's gaze and nodded, a small, exhausted smile on his face. They'd done it. The bomb was disarmed, the summit saved. Gabriel felt a surge of giddy relief. Then Uko's smile vanished, his eyes going wide. "Gabriel, behind you!" Gabriel started to turn, but it was too late. Kravok had pulled a hidden blade and lunged, murderous intent etched on his face. In that frozen instant, Gabriel knew he couldn't dodge in time. He braced for the searing pain of the knife plunging into his back. Gabriel turned to see Alara standing in the doorway, a smoking blaster in her hand and a fierce light in her eyes. Gabriel let out a shaky laugh as Uko hauled him to his feet. Around them, security teams flooded into the room, taking Kravok and his associates into custody. The warlord glared balefully at Gabriel and Uko as he was dragged away. "This isn't over," he hissed. "There will always be those who oppose your pitiful dream of peace." "Maybe," Gabriel said steadily, "but there will also always be those who fight for it." Uko gripped his arm in return, a wordless acknowledgement of all they'd been through. Together they walked out to face the shaken but resolute delegates, ready to continue the work of building a lasting peace. The path ahead would be long and fraught with challenges, but with Gabriel and Uko leading the way, both sides knew that a brighter future was within reach, a future where human and Betazoid would stand not as enemies, but as allies, as friends. The incident with Kravok had shaken the fragile trust between the two sides, but it had also shown the strength of the bond Gabriel and Uko had forged. In the face of extremism and hatred, they had stood firm, united in their commitment to peace. In the days that followed, the two worked tirelessly to reassure the delegates and keep the negotiations on track. They shared their story, the journey that had brought them from bitter enemies to the closest of friends. Slowly but surely, their example began to take root. Tentative smiles were exchanged between human and Betazoid diplomats. Joint proposals were floated and debated. The dream of the Edenites, of a galaxy united in understanding, started to take shape. There was still much work to be done, wounds to heal, prejudices to overcome, but for the first time in generations, there was real hope. And at the center of it all stood Gabriel and Uko, a living symbol of what could be achieved when differences were set aside and common ground was sought. They had walked through fire to reach this point, and they would not rest until the job was done. As the negotiations stretched on, as Gabriel and Uko's shuttle descended towards the war-torn planet's surface, they could see the scars of conflict etched into the landscape. Ruined cities and cratered battlefields stretched as far as the eye could see. The human and Betazoid soldiers accompanying them checked their weapons, faces grim beneath their helmets. "All right, listen up," Gabriel said, his voice carrying over the hum of the engines. "Our mission is to provide aid and support to the local population. We're here to show them that peace is possible, that humans and Betazoids can work together." Uko nodded, his scaled features set in determination. "Stay sharp and stay together. We don't know what we might face down there." The shuttle touched down on the outskirts of a ruined city. As the ramp lowered, Gabriel and Uko led their team out into the desolate streets. They moved cautiously, eyes scanning for any signs of danger. For hours they worked tirelessly, distributing food, medicine, and other vital supplies to the wary survivors. Many were initially hesitant to accept aid from a mixed human and betazoid force, but Gabriel and Uko's genuine compassion and the clear cooperation between their soldiers slowly began to win them over. As they were setting up a temporary field hospital in the shell of a ruined building, Gabriel's comm crackled to life. "Captain, we're receiving an urgent distress call on an encrypted channel. It's coming from a research facility a few clicks north of your position." Gabriel frowned and glanced at Uko. The betazoid's brow furrowed as he listened in. "What kind of research facility?" Uko asked. "Unknown, sir. The message is fragmented, but they claim to have made some kind of breakthrough. They say they're under attack by an unknown force and need immediate assistance." Gabriel and Uko shared a look. They knew their primary mission was to aid the local population, but if this facility had truly made a discovery that could change the galaxy, they couldn't ignore it. "Understood. We're on our way." Gabriel turned to his team. "Change of plans. We've got a research facility under attack. We're moving out to provide support." They boarded their shuttle and rocketed towards the facility's coordinates. As they approached, they could see smoke rising from the compound. The buildings were pockmarked with scorch marks and rubble, clear signs of a fierce battle. The shuttle touched down just outside the facility's perimeter. Gabriel and Uko led their team towards the entrance, weapons at the ready. The silence that greeted them was eerie and unsettling. They moved through the ruined corridors, stepping over fallen debris and shattered equipment. There was no sign of the scientists or their attackers. It was as if they had simply vanished. Suddenly, a burst of energy slammed into the wall next to Gabriel's head. He dove for cover, shouting a warning to the others. More bolts followed, sizzling through the air with deadly precision. Gabriel risked a glance around the corner and felt his blood run cold. Their attackers were unlike anything he had ever seen. Insectoid in appearance, with chitinous armor and multifaceted eyes, they wielded weapons that glowed with an eerie green light. "Fall back," Gabriel ordered, laying down covering fire. "Regroup at the—" His words were cut off by a scream of pain. One of his soldiers fell, a smoldering hole in his chest. Another followed, then another, as the aliens pressed their attack with ruthless efficiency. Gabriel and Uko fought side by side, their weapons blazing as they tried to hold back the tide. But for every insectoid they felled, two more seemed to take its place. Their team was being cut to pieces. "We can't hold them," Uko snarled, his blade flashing as he engaged an alien in close quarters. "We have to fall back, find another way." Gabriel gritted his teeth, but he knew Uko was right. With a final burst of fire, they turned and fled deeper into the facility, the anguished cries of their dying comrades echoing in their ears. They raced through the twisting corridors, the sound of pursuit close behind. Finally, they stumbled into what appeared to be a central lab, the door slamming shut behind them. The room was a shambles, equipment overturned and papers scattered. But in the center, on a raised dais, sat a device unlike anything they had seen. It pulsed with an otherworldly light, intricate circuitry and unknown components spinning and whirring. Gabriel approached cautiously, his eyes scanning the readouts on the nearby screens. What he saw made his blood run cold. The scientist had been experimenting with interdimensional technology, trying to punch through the barriers between realities. But their calculations, if correct, suggested that doing so could tear apart the very fabric of space-time. A boom shook the room, and the door began to glow with the heat of the aliens' weapons. They were cutting through, and fast. Gabriel and Uko looked at each other, the weight of the moment hanging between them. In their hands lay a device that could change the course of the galaxy, but also one that could potentially destroy it. "What do we do?" Uko asked, his voice grim. "Destroy it or use it?" Gabriel hesitated, his mind racing. The aliens were nearly through. They had seconds at most. If they could harness the prototype's power, they might stand a chance. But the risks... The door exploded inward, and the aliens poured through, weapons blazing. Gabriel and Uko moved as one, diving for the device. As the insectoid aliens closed in, their weapons blazing with searing light, Gabriel and Uko exchanged a desperate glance. The prototype device pulsed before them, its intricate controls flashing with alien glyphs. "We have to use it," Gabriel shouted over the chaos. "It's our only chance." Uko nodded grimly, his hands flying over the device's surface. "I'll try to activate it. Cover me." Gabriel spun, his rifle spitting plasma as he drove the aliens back. Their chittering screams filled the air as they fell, but more surged forward to take their place. Uko worked feverishly, sweat beading his brow as he struggled to decipher the complex controls. Suddenly the device thrummed to life, its core glowing with an unearthly light. "I think I've got it," Uko yelled, "but I don't know what—" His words were lost as a blinding surge of energy erupted from the device, engulfing the chamber in a searing wave of light. Gabriel and Uko were hurled back, their bodies slamming into the crumbling walls. Through the haze of pain, Gabriel saw the insectoid aliens caught in the energy surge, their bodies disintegrating into motes of light. For a moment, he dared to hope that they had succeeded. But then the facility shook with a terrible groan, the walls cracking and buckling. Sparks cascaded from ruptured conduits, and the air shimmered with strange distortions. "What's happening?" Gabriel shouted, staggering to his feet. Uko looked around, his eyes wide with growing horror. "The device— I think we've triggered something catastrophic. Look!" "We have to get out of here," Gabriel yelled, grabbing Uko's arm. "The whole place is coming down." They ran, dodging falling debris and leaping chasms that opened in the floor. The anomalies spread like a cancer, warping the very air around them. As they neared the exit, a terrible realization struck Gabriel. He skidded to a halt, his heart pounding. Uko's eyes widened with understanding. The scientists, their experiments, they were never trying to create a new form of travel. They were building a weapon. Gabriel nodded grimly. "A weapon capable of tearing apart the barriers between dimensions, and we've just activated it." The facility shuddered, the roof collapsing in a cascade of rubble. Gabriel and Uko dove forward, barely making it through the exit before the passage sealed behind them. Outside, the anomalies were spreading, the very fabric of space-time twisting and warping. Gabriel knew with terrible certainty that if left unchecked, the chaos would consume everything, tearing their reality apart at the seams. He turned to Uko, his expression grim. "We have to stop this. We have to seal the rift." Uko met his gaze, understanding dawning in his eyes. "But the only way to do that is from the other side," Gabriel finished. "We'll have to go through, use the device to close the breach from within." Uko nodded slowly, the weight of the decision settling on his shoulders. "We'll be trapped there, cut off from our own reality." Gabriel clasped his friend's shoulder, his grip tight. "I know, but it's the only way. We have to do this, Uko, for the sake of everything we've fought for." Uko took a deep breath, then nodded. "Together then, until the end." They turned back to the facility, to the seething rift that threatened to unmake their world. Hand in hand they stepped forward, ready to make the ultimate sacrifice. The anomalies surged around them as they approached the rift. The device clutched tight in Gabriel's hand. He could feel it thrumming with power, the key to sealing the breach. At the threshold they paused, looking back one last time at the world they were leaving behind. Gabriel thought of all they had fought for, the bond they had forged through shared hardship and unbreakable trust. "Gabriel," Uko said, his voice rough with emotion, "I just want you to know, serving with you, fighting alongside you. It's been the greatest honor of my life." Gabriel felt a lump rise in his throat. He clasped Uko's hand tighter, a wordless acknowledgement of all that lay between them. Then together they stepped into the rift. The world dissolved around them in a kaleidoscope of light and shadow. Gabriel felt himself falling, tumbling through an endless void. Beside him, Uko's presence was a constant anchor, a reminder of why they had chosen this path. With a final wrenching effort, Gabriel activated the device. A blinding pulse of energy surged from it, rippling out to engulf the rift. He felt the fabric of reality shudder and convulse, the breach sealing behind them with a thunderous roar. Then silence, stillness. Gabriel and Ukko found themselves standing in a strange alien realm, the shattered remnants of the insectoid civilization stretching out before them. They had done it. The rift was sealed, their own reality safe from the chaos they had unleashed, but the cost had been high. Gabriel looked at Ukko, saw the same realization in his friend's eyes. They were trapped here in this strange dimension, forever cut off from all they had known. But as they stood there, hand in hand, Gabriel knew that they had made the right choice. They had sacrificed everything to save countless lives, to ensure a future of peace and cooperation for the humans and betazoids. And though they could never go home, they had each other. Two warriors, two friends, united by a bond that transcended space and time. In the years that followed, their story would become legend, passed down from generation to generation, the tale of Gabriel and Ukko, the heroes who gave everything to save their worlds. You have reached the end of the story. If you enjoyed this story and want to support us, please leave a like and subscribe to our channel, and for every comment that says 88, I will heart every single one of them. Thank you for your time.